My name is Daniel Cohen, and what I'm about to share with you happened on July 15th, 2011. I was living in Portland, Oregon at the time, working as an HVAC technician, nothing glamorous, just a job that paid the bills and kept me too busy to think about much else. I grew up Jewish, in a culturally observant home, but to be honest, I hadn't prayed in years. My life was more about stress and routine than anything spiritual. I wasn't anti-God. I just didn't have space for him. I wasn't looking for answers or truth or salvation. I was just trying to get through life with as little pain as possible. That morning, I remember feeling weird before I even left the house. I couldn't put my finger on it. It was like my body was present, but my spirit was elsewhere. I had a job scheduled for a busted AC unit in a downtown office building, and by the time I got there, I was already feeling faint. I chalked it up to dehydration or skipping breakfast. But when I got into the elevator and it began to rise, something in me dropped. It wasn't physical, it was deeper, heavier. The world around me started getting quiet, muffled, like my ears were filled with cotton. The next thing I remember, the floor seemed to tilt, and I blacked out completely. I woke up later in a hospital bed, told that I'd gone into full cardiac arrest in that elevator and had been dead, clinically dead, for nearly 2 minutes. But in those 2 minutes, I didn't feel like I was gone. I was somewhere, and wherever I was, it wasn't a dream. It was more real than anything I'd ever known. I was surrounded by a light so alive, it felt like it knew me. Every regret, every fear, every thought I'd ever buried, it was all laid bare. And standing in the middle of it was a man I had never met but instantly recognized. Jesus. I can't explain how I knew. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't need to. His presence alone shattered every doubt. I was overwhelmed by a love so fierce, so personal, I couldn't stop weeping. I dropped to my knees, not because he told me to, but because my soul couldn't do anything else. And then he said something I didn't expect. He looked directly into me and said, "You must speak it before August 31st. Just that. Nothing more. No explanation. No follow-up." And then, just like that, I was back, gasping, surrounded by chaos. But all I could think about was his eyes and those words. I couldn't sleep for days after that. The doctors told me I was lucky to be alive, that I had flatlined and been brought back just in time. But I wasn't thinking about luck. I was thinking about that message. You must speak it before August 31st. At first, I thought maybe I imagined it. Maybe it was my brain firing off strange visions as it died. But no matter how many times I tried to explain it away, that moment stood apart from anything I'd ever experienced. The way Jesus looked at me, it wasn't like how people in dreams appear. It was beyond a vision. It was a confrontation, a calling. And I knew in my bones that whatever he meant, it was something I had to say out loud, publicly, before that exact date. It wasn't optional. It felt like a spiritual alarm clock, set on some divine timer. And every day that passed, that date got closer. I didn't even know what I was supposed to say. I had no theological background, no training. I hadn't read the Bible outside of Hebrew school as a kid. But something had changed in me. The air around me felt different. People started noticing I wasn't the same. I stopped caring about work, about bills, about distractions. I spent hours sitting alone, just listening, praying, something I never did before. I felt this invisible hand guiding me towards something, like I was being prepared to deliver a message that I didn't even understand yet. I talked to rabbis, pastors, a Messianic Jewish leader I found online. None of them could explain why I saw Jesus. Some warned me I was being misled. But deep down, I knew it was him. And I knew what he told me wasn't just for me. It was for someone else, or maybe for many. I started writing everything down. Dreams, thoughts, memories, scriptures that jumped out at me. I was trying to put together a puzzle with half the pieces missing. But that phrase, those exact words, "Speak it before August 31st, echoed like a countdown in my chest. And with each day, I felt a pressure growing inside me, like if I didn't obey, something terrible would be missed or lost. The turning point came on August 27th. I had been delaying, still unsure what it even meant. I thought maybe I was supposed to write a letter, maybe a testimony, or maybe just tell one person. But it didn't feel complete. That night, I had a dream. I was standing in front of a mirror, and my reflection was gone. Just empty glass. And behind me, Jesus stood again. Same eyes, same silence. And he just pointed. I woke up shaking. I knew then I couldn't keep waiting. I had to go public. I had to tell the world exactly what I saw, even if it cost me everything: my reputation, my friends, my family's respect. I recorded a video. One take. No edits. Just raw truth. I told the story from start to finish, and I spoke directly to the camera, looking into it like I was looking into someone's eyes, someone who needed to hear it. I told them Jesus is real, that he loves us more than we can comprehend, that he told me, "You must speak it before August 31st. And I didn't know what the consequence would be if I stayed silent, but I couldn't take that risk. I said maybe it's a message meant for you. Maybe it's not even about me. Maybe it's about something God is doing on the earth that we don't yet see." I posted the video and walked away from the screen. I thought maybe no one would watch it. Maybe it would just sit there like a forgotten pebble in the ocean of the internet. But I was wrong. Within 48 hours, it had been shared over 100,000 times. Emails started pouring in. People from around the world saying they had heard the same phrase in dreams, that Jesus had told them something urgent about the end of August. A woman from Brazil said she'd been told in prayer that someone would come forward with a deadline. A man from Kentucky said he'd had a heart attack 3 months earlier and saw Jesus mouth the words "end of August" before he came back. All these stories began to stack, and I realized I wasn't alone. I was part of something bigger, something prophetic. And the most haunting moment came the evening of August 31st. I was sitting in my apartment, staring out the window as the sun went down. It felt like a clock was ticking inside me. I remember whispering to God, "I did what you asked. I spoke it. Now what?" There was no thunder, no lightning, just a quiet peace that settled over me. But the next morning, I got a message from a man in Ohio. He said he was going to end his life on August 31st at midnight. He had written a note. He had made peace with it. But right before, he opened YouTube one last time, and my video was the first one on his feed. He watched the entire thing. And when I said those words, "Jesus told me to speak it before August 31st, he fell to the floor sobbing. He said it was like someone reached through the screen and grabbed him. That he knew, in that moment, God was real, and that God hadn't given up on him. I cried for a long time after reading that, because I finally understood. The mission wasn't to explain the message. It was to deliver it. That man's life, and maybe others, were part of a divine plan I still don't fully understand. But Jesus knew, and he trusted me, a stubborn, skeptical, blue-collar guy who didn't even believe in him a few months earlier, to carry it. That kind of love changes you. It breaks you in the best way, and it makes you want to keep speaking long after the deadline has passed. After that night, something inside me shifted permanently. I couldn't go back to normal life, not really. It's like the old version of me had been burned away in the fire of what I saw. I was still walking around, still eating, working, talking to people, but there was a part of me that was always somewhere else, always listening. That awareness never left. I could feel God's presence in places I'd never noticed before, on the bus ride home, in line at the grocery store, in the silence before sleep. I stopped listening to the same music, stopped wasting time on meaningless conversations. Everything in my life suddenly had weight. Every choice, every word. I had this unshakable sense that I was living on borrowed time, not because I was about to die again, but because God had extended me some kind of grace period, a second life, and I didn't want to waste a single second of it. But that awareness also came with a cost. Friends I'd had for years started pulling away. They didn't know what to do with the new me. Some of them mocked the video, said I'd joined some cult, or that it was just brain damage from the cardiac arrest. Even people in my own family didn't know what to say. My brother stopped calling. My mother told me, gently, that maybe I needed help. But I couldn't unsee what I saw. I couldn't unknow it. And honestly, I didn't blame them. If someone had told me this a year earlier, I probably would have laughed too. But now I knew the truth. Not just that Jesus was real, but that he was watching, waiting, and calling. Calling each of us, not just to believe in him, but to obey him, even when it makes no sense, even when it costs everything. I stopped worrying about who understood me and started focusing on being available for whatever came next. I started fasting, praying, reading scripture day and night, not because I was trying to earn something, but because I was starving. I'd been spiritually starving my whole life, and I didn't even realize it until he fed me that day with those few words. You must speak it before August 31st. Those words were the beginning of everything. And somehow, I knew they were only the beginning. About 2 months later, I had another experience that I've told very few people about. It wasn't as dramatic as the first, but it was just as real. I was driving home from work, tired, thinking about stopping for takeout. It was a regular Tuesday night. The radio was playing some worship song. I don't even remember which one. And suddenly, I had this overwhelming urge to pull over. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the wheel. I pulled into a church parking lot. It wasn't even my church, just the nearest lot. And I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, breathing like I'd just run a mile. And then I felt him again. Not in front of me this time. Inside me. Not just like a thought, not just a whisper, but like a presence filling every part of my chest. I broke down crying, sobbing like a child. And I heard him say, clear as day, they still aren't listening. Speak again. No date this time. No deadline. Just that same deep urgency. Speak again. And that's when I knew the message wasn't over. It hadn't just been about one video or one man in Ohio. This was part of something much, much larger. That same night, I went home and began writing. I didn't know what I was writing at first, but the words poured out of me like a flood. It turned into a second video, and then a third. I shared not just my story, but the call I felt in my bones, to wake people up, to warn them that this world is not all there is, that time is running short, and that God is trying to get our attention. The responses multiplied. People began sending me their dreams, visions, confirmations. I started a small online group for people who'd had similar encounters. And I realized something that chilled me to the core. Many of them had been told similar phrases, words about deadlines, warnings, and the need to speak. Some had heard the same month. Some had seen fire falling. Others had seen Jesus crying. It was as if he was moving across the world like a storm cloud, trying to wake his people one by one, and I was just one drop in the rain. One night, I received a message from a man in Jerusalem. He said he'd been a practicing rabbi for 20 years, and he had watched my video late one night, just out of curiosity. He told me that when I spoke the words Jesus gave me, he fell to the floor and couldn't breathe. He said it was as if someone opened his chest and poured light into his lungs. He told me he had never believed in the New Testament, had always rejected Jesus as the Messiah, but something broke open in him that night. He said the words, "You must speak it before August 31st," echoed something he had been hearing in dreams for years, but had dismissed. And now, for the first time, he was ready to listen. We ended up speaking on the phone for over 2 hours. He wept openly as he told me how many of his students were also starting to question, starting to see. And I wept too, because I realized this wasn't just about Christians. It wasn't just about those already in the faith. Jesus was reaching across boundaries, through culture, religion, nationality. He was calling his people, all of them, back home. And if even one of them heard him through my trembling voice, then every moment of doubt, every lost friendship, every hour spent alone in prayer had been worth it. But the work wasn't done. That's what I kept hearing. Every time I tried to rest, every time I tried to take a break from speaking, the Spirit would gently push me forward again. Not in a punishing way, not like a taskmaster, but like a shepherd who sees the cliff ahead and knows his sheep are blind to it. And the urgency only kept growing. I started seeing things in dreams I'd never seen before. Cities burning, people running, voices crying out for help. In some dreams, I was yelling into a microphone, but no sound came out. In others, I was watching the clock tick down to zero, and no one around me seemed to notice. I'd wake up with my heart pounding, drenched in sweat, and I'd feel Jesus near, always near, whispering, "They still need to hear." By the start of the next year, I had made peace with the fact that my life was no longer my own. I wasn't chasing comfort or stability anymore. I had sold my condo, moved into a smaller apartment, and started working fewer hours so I could spend more time sharing the message. My bank account wasn't impressive, but I didn't care. I felt richer than I ever had. Because for the first time in my life, I knew I was doing exactly what I was created to do. That sense of alignment, that clarity, is something I wouldn't trade for anything. I started speaking at small churches, mostly last-minute invites from people who had seen the video online. I never asked for money. I never promoted myself. I just shared what happened. I told the truth, plainly and without embellishment. And every time, without fail, someone would come up to me after and say, "You were sent for me." I don't say that to boast. I say that because it proves how deeply personal Jesus is. He doesn't just shout from the clouds. He sends people. He uses our scars, our weaknesses, our fear, our obedience. And if we let him, he'll place us right in the path of someone who's been crying out for a sign. I started seeing the ripple effect. People I had never met were making their own videos, sharing their own testimonies. And many of them referenced August 31st. That date, that strange, mysterious deadline, kept showing up. It became clear that it wasn't just a private command. It was a prophetic warning. Something was shifting, not just in my life, but in the world. And I still don't know the full meaning of that date. I may never know, but I obeyed. I spoke it. And that one act of obedience, terrifying and confusing as it was, opened the door for dozens, maybe hundreds, to encounter the same Jesus who met me in the space between death and life. As the story spread, I started getting messages from people in places I'd never even heard of, tiny villages in India, cities in Nigeria, rural towns in Russia. Different languages, different cultures, different ages, but the same message kept popping up. Some said they'd seen Jesus in dreams and that he gave them similar dates. Others had never believed in God, but said something about the phrase "before August 31st" hit them like a freight train. A girl from Argentina wrote to me saying she had been dabbling in the occult and was about to go through with a ritual she didn't fully understand. She was scrolling YouTube aimlessly when my video autoplayed. She said the moment I said Jesus' name, something dark in the room vanished. She felt what she described as a ripping in her soul, like something unclean was being torn out of her. She didn't even speak English fluently, but she told me she understood every word. That stunned me, not because of me, but because of how personal Jesus is, how powerful his name is across language, distance, and darkness. It made me realize that this whole thing, the message, the urgency, the strange deadline, wasn't confined to my little world. It was global. It was kingdom level. And somehow, in his infinite grace, God was using someone like me to be part of it. There were nights I sat on my floor crying because I didn't feel worthy. I knew who I used to be, the things I'd done, the lies I told, the selfishness I lived in for years. But Jesus didn't look at any of that when he chose to speak to me. He didn't bring up my past, didn't ask me to clean myself up first. He just gave me an assignment and trusted that his strength would carry me through it. And he was right, because everything I've done since then has been by his strength alone. I couldn't do this in my own power. Not a chance. I'm not eloquent. I'm not brave. I'm not the kind of person people look to for spiritual guidance. But I'm available. And I've learned that's all God really needs. That August deadline came and went, but something continued to burn in my chest. a sense that we were closer to something bigger, something unfolding. It felt like the calm before a storm. I started noticing patterns in world events, shifts in culture, the acceleration of confusion and division. People around me were more anxious, more angry, more numb. It's like the spiritual fog had thickened, and most people couldn't see what was coming. But those who had eyes to see, they were waking up. Not all at once, but steadily, like little lights flickering on across a dark landscape. I could feel it every time I posted a new message. There'd be a new wave of people emailing, saying, "I had the same dream," or "God told me the same thing." One man sent me a voice memo in tears, saying he'd been planning to walk away from ministry because he felt burned out and useless. But when he heard me speak about August 31st, he felt fire return to his bones. He said, "You reminded me why I said yes in the first place." That meant more to me than any viral view count ever could. It confirmed that the ripple effect of one man's obedience could touch lives he'd never meet. I wasn't chasing revival. I was simply speaking what I had been told. But in doing so, God was fanning something deeper. And I realized this wasn't just a one-time experience. This was a calling. This was the beginning of the rest of my life. A life of full surrender. A life of uncomfortable obedience. A life that didn't belong to me anymore. And strangely, I was okay with that. I had never known this kind of peace. Not comfort, not ease, but peace. That deep-rooted confidence that even when things go wrong, I'm in the hands of the one who made the stars. And not only that, I'm on assignment from him. The more I spoke, the more resistance I encountered. Not just from people, from spiritual forces I couldn't always name. The atmosphere would shift in certain places when I walked in. I'd get heavy, like something unseen didn't want me there. I'd have nights where I woke up gasping for air, like something was trying to silence me in my sleep. One night, I had a vivid dream where I was standing at a podium, trying to speak, but my mouth was sewn shut. And in the crowd were demons, laughing. But right before I woke up, Jesus appeared behind me in the dream, placed his hand on my shoulder, and my mouth burst open like fire. I woke up sobbing, drenched in sweat, but I wasn't afraid. Because I knew that even when the enemy tries to shut us up, God will always make a way for his message to get out. It was spiritual warfare, plain and simple. I wasn't battling people. I was battling the air. The resistance only proved that the message had weight. I started fasting more, praying in the early morning hours, walking around my apartment declaring scripture out loud. Not because I'm super spiritual, but because I needed it to survive. I was under attack, but I wasn't backing down. I'd come too far. Jesus had rescued me from the edge of death and given me a purpose I didn't even know I was searching for. I owed him everything. And more than that, I loved him. Not just in a Sunday school way. I loved him like someone who had saved my life, like someone who had looked at the worst of me and still called me worthy of a mission. That kind of love changes how you breathe. It changes how you walk into a room. I stopped caring what people thought. I stopped trying to blend in. I started asking God daily, "What do you want me to say today?" And more often than not, he would answer. It's been a few years now since that original encounter. I don't mark August 31st with dread anymore. Now, every time that date comes around, I fast. I remember. I pray for whoever out there might still be running. I think about the people who told me my message saved them. I think about the ones who wrote and said it was too late, that they wish they'd listened sooner. That part still breaks me, because I know not everyone who hears will believe. I know some people will scroll right past, roll their eyes, and laugh. But I don't speak for them. I speak for the one who is listening, for the one whose heart is burning and they don't know why, for the one who's been asking God for a sign, for the one on the edge of giving up. I speak for them, because someone spoke for me once. Jesus didn't yell. He didn't shame me. He gave me a sentence, a strange one, a phrase I didn't understand. But it unlocked something that turned my entire life around. And if he did that for me, a stubborn, skeptical, burned-out guy just trying to get through life, He can do it for anyone. You might not have seen what I saw, but if you're hearing this, I believe you're being called too. Maybe not to preach, maybe not to speak publicly, but to say yes to him, to stop running, to stop hiding behind logic and pain and fear. He's real, he's alive, and he's speaking. The question is, will you answer? It's been a few years now since I first heard those words. You must speak it before August 31st, and I still don't go a single day without thinking about them. That date is burned into my memory, not out of fear, but reverence. It was the day everything in my life turned, when everything I thought I understood got stripped away and replaced by something deeper, truer. Every year, as August approaches, I start to feel it again, not panic, but a sacred tension, like something in heaven is drawing near. I usually spend that day alone now, not to isolate, but to reflect. I turn off my phone. I walk. I pray. I fast. I thank Jesus for not giving up on me when I didn't even believe in him. I ask him to help me keep saying yes, no matter how tired I get. I've learned that obedience is not about grand moments or big stages. It's in the quiet, in the decision to keep showing up, even when you feel invisible. I've spoken in churches, yes, and I've posted videos. But some of the most powerful moments came when I was just sitting across from someone in a diner or standing in line at a gas station, and the Holy Spirit nudged me to speak. I've learned that Jesus doesn't just move through microphones. He moves through whispers, through presence, through people willing to look foolish if it means one person's eternity changes. I never wanted a platform. I never asked for this. But I can't imagine living any other way now. There's no version of my old life I'd go back to. I'm not the same man anymore. I'm not trying to be impressive. I'm trying to be faithful. Because on that day, in that moment between life and death, when Jesus looked at me with eyes like fire and mercy, I felt what I had been starving for my entire life, belonging. Not just to something, to someone. And I'll spend the rest of my life doing whatever he asks, even if it costs me everything. There's one more thing I've never told anyone, not publicly anyway. After I made that first video, after the rush of messages and confirmations and testimonies, there was one night I couldn't sleep. It was around 2 a.m. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling this ache in my chest like I'd forgotten something. So I got up, went out to the living room, sat on the floor, and just started talking to Jesus out loud. I didn't plan it. I didn't script it. I just let it pour out. The doubt, the fear, the guilt over waiting so long to speak, the questions that still haunted me. And for the first time since that elevator ride, I felt him again, physically. The temperature in the room dropped. The air got thick. And I felt this presence sit right beside me, not like a ghost, not like an idea, but like a person, like a friend, like a king. And I didn't see him this time, not with my eyes, but I knew it was him. I could feel his nearness, and I could barely breathe. I was shaking, but not in fear, in awe. And he didn't say anything for the longest time, just sat with me. And then, finally, I heard him say, "Well done." That was it. 2 words. And yet, they broke me. I sat there crying into my hands like a child. Because for the first time in my entire existence, I felt finished. Not perfect, not fixed, but whole. Like I had done something that actually mattered in heaven. Like eternity had been to take notice of my obedience. And I thought about all the times I almost said no. All the times I almost kept my mouth shut. And I realized how close I came to missing it. To missing him. That night sealed it for me. It wasn't about the deadline anymore. It wasn't about the platform, the audience, or the reach. It was about walking so closely with Jesus that when he whispers, you don't hesitate. You don't ask for proof. You just say, "Yes, Lord." I told him that night, "I'm yours. For real this time. All in. Use me however you want." And I've never looked back. If you're still listening to this, I believe there's a reason. I believe you were meant to hear this. Not from a pastor, not from a religious leader, but from an ordinary man who died and saw the eyes of Jesus. I don't have all the answers. I still wrestle. But I know that Jesus is real. I know He speaks. I know He saves. And I know that if you're breathing, there's still time for you to respond. Maybe you've ignored Him. Maybe you've doubted. Maybe you've been running for so long you don't even remember why you started. But He hasn't stopped loving you. He hasn't stopped calling. He's still reaching, still waiting, still whispering through dreams, through pain, through strangers, through moments just like this one. You don't need to clean yourself up first. You don't need to figure it all out. You just need to respond. Say yes, even if you don't understand everything. Say yes anyway. The same way I did that day when I heard Him say, "You must speak it before August 31st. I didn't know why. I didn't know how. But I obeyed. And because of that one act, I've seen people come to life again. I've seen hope return to the hopeless. I've seen miracles. All because I finally stopped fighting and just said, "Okay, Lord, I'm ready." And now, I'm asking you, are you ready? If this message spoke to something deep in your heart, don't scroll away. Take a moment. Sit with it. Talk to Jesus. He's not far. He's right there with you. And if you feel led, share this video with someone else who needs it. You never know whose life might be hanging in the balance. Time is short. Eternity is real. And your yes might be the most important decision you ever make.